I met Marcy in 10th grade. She had this messy ponytail and always wore Converse with holes in the sides. I thought she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. We started dating junior year, and that was it for me. There was no one else. We got married at 21, had Jessica 2 years later, and then the twins, Brian and Baxter, not long after that. My name's John Rivers. I'm 43 years old. I live in Eugene, Oregon. I work as an electronics data processing manager for a logistics company, mostly overseeing reporting systems and software. It's not glamorous, but it pays well and keeps me busy. What really excited me lately, though, was a side project I was doing with my best friend, Elton. We'd been developing a new kind of distributed server system, and if we got it right, we had a shot at selling it to a few major regional clients. Elton worked in IT consulting, and together we made a good team. He handled the clients and specs, I built the guts. At home, things looked good from the outside. We had a nice 2-story house in the suburbs. Jessica was 14 and loved theater, always memorizing scripts or running lines with me while I made dinner. Brian and Baxter were 12, wild, loud, inseparable. The three of them gave the house this energy, like something was always happening. I used to come home to chaos and feel like the luckiest guy alive. But over time, things started to shift. Marcy smiled less. She stayed out longer, saying she was running errands or helping her sister with something. She stopped joining me on the couch at night. When I asked her about it, she'd just say she was tired, or stressed, or not in the mood to talk. I chalked it up to midlife burnout. We were both getting older, and raising 3 kids wasn't easy. I figured maybe she just needed space, or maybe I'd been too wrapped up in work lately. I promised myself I'd be more present, try harder. Still, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was off. There were mornings when she wouldn't even look at me over coffee, nights where we'd lie in the same bed, backs turned like strangers. I kept telling myself it was just a phase, that we'd come out of it. I remember thinking, we have a beautiful life. How bad could it really be? Turns out I had no idea how far gone we already were. It was a Thursday, late September, one of those weirdly warm Oregon afternoons that tricks you into thinking summer's still hanging on. I came home around 6, tired but in a decent mood. Elton and I had finally cracked a bug in the server redundancy loop we'd been chasing for weeks. I walked in, set my keys on the counter, and called out, "Smells good. What's for dinner?" Marcy was sitting at the kitchen table, not cooking, not even moving. She had a manila envelope in front of her and a blank stare that didn't register me. I paused. "Everything okay?" She blinked slowly, then nodded to the envelope. "Sit down, John." My gut turned instantly. "Why?" "Just sit, please." I sat. She looked down at her hands, then up at me. "I want a divorce." It felt like someone slammed a book shut in my chest. I just stared at her. "What?" "I want a divorce," she repeated, like she'd been practicing it. "And before you ask why, I need to tell you something." She slid the envelope across the table. I didn't open it right away. I was still trying to process the word divorce. "John," she said quietly, "Brian and Baxter, they're not yours." I blinked. "What?" "They're not your biological sons. I've known since I was pregnant." The air went out of the room. I felt like I'd been kicked in the head. "Are you joking?" "I'm not." I reached for the envelope with a trembling hand, opened it. Inside were paternity test results, names, dates, all neatly documented, like it was a legal matter and not the end of my goddamn life. I looked up at her. "How long?" Marcy didn't flinch. "Since before the twins were born. I had an affair, off and on for years." My throat burned. "With who?" She hesitated. "His name is Langford." That name meant nothing to me, which somehow made it worse. A stranger. She continued, calm and rehearsed, like she'd already mourned it all. "I was going to tell you years ago, but you were good with the kids. You provided. I didn't want to blow it all up. But now, I can't keep pretending." I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. Marcy stood and pulled another paper from her purse. "I'm filing next week. I need you to sign this. And I need $500 a month for Jessica. Just for her, not the boys." I finally found my voice, low and hoarse. "You lied to me for over a decade, and now you want child support?" She didn't blink. "She's your daughter, John, legally and biologically. And the boys? They'll be staying with me. Langford's moving in." I stood slowly, legs shaky. You've got to be kidding me. She shrugged, almost indifferent. You deserve the truth. And now you have it. No yelling, no tears, just the clean dismantling of a life I thought I understood. I stared at her for a long time, trying to find even a flicker of the girl I fell in love with in high school. She was gone, and everything I thought I knew was too. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the garage, staring at the floor with a half-warm beer in my hand, trying to make sense of the past 15 years. Marcy had gone to bed after dropping the divorce bomb like it was just another item on her to-do list. I didn't even hear her footsteps upstairs. I was too busy replaying every memory I'd ever had of Brian and Baxter, holding them as newborns, coaching their soccer teams, helping with their math homework, and wondering how none of it was real. The next morning, she handed me a thick folder. That's the full proposal, custody, finances, everything. I didn't open it. I want Jessica every weekend, and on school breaks. Marcy raised an eyebrow. You think I'm going to give up that much time with her? You're moving in with Langford, I said, voice tight. I don't even know the guy, but Jessica's my daughter, and I'm not about to let her be raised by some guy who... I stopped myself. Weekends and school breaks, that's non-negotiable. She looked away for a second, then nodded. Fine. I exhaled, the first sign of relief since this all started. What about holidays? We'll split them, she said flatly. And her school? Is she staying at Jefferson High? She wants to. That small detail gave me something to hold on to. I finally opened the folder. Legal terms, joint custody of Jessica, with physical custody leaning toward Marcy. Child support, $500 a month. No financial responsibilities for the twins, since I'm not their biological father. How long's this been going on? I asked. She didn't answer. Was it just Langford? Still silence. I looked up from the paperwork. Marcy, I lived with you, slept beside you, raised kids with you. Don't I at least get the truth? She rubbed her eyes. There were others. But Langford, he was the one I went back to. The one who never really went away. I stared at her. Do the boys know? She hesitated. No. I nodded slowly. And you're planning to just let them figure it out on their own? Or tell them when they're old enough to feel completely betrayed? They won't feel betrayed if Langford steps up, she said, almost defensively. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. You don't just swap dads like tires on a car. Marcy stood and picked up her keys. I'm meeting Langford for lunch. We're signing our new lease. I stood too. You know, for someone who says this was hard, you're walking away pretty fast. She gave me one last look, unreadable. It was hard, but it's done. As she walked out, it hit me. I'd been grieving a marriage that, to her, had ended long ago. I was still standing in a house she'd already left. Jessica came home around 4 that Saturday. I was still sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the divorce papers like they might rewrite themselves if I stared long enough. She walked in with her usual energy, backpack slung over one shoulder, earbuds in, humming something I didn't recognize. Hey, Dad, she said, tossing her shoes off near the door. Why does it smell like burned toast in here? I hadn't made toast, or eaten, or moved much in the past 20 hours. She stopped mid-step when she saw my face. What's going on? I didn't know where to start, so I just said it. Your mom wants a divorce. Jessica stood still for a second, then slowly sat down across from me. Her expression didn't change much, just this sort of quiet resignation that didn't belong on a 14-year-old's face. I know, she said. That threw me. What do you mean, you know? She shrugged, pulled her phone from her hoodie pocket and turned it off. I've known for a while, not the details, but I knew something was coming. I felt like I was the last one to catch up. She told you? Not directly, but I heard things. She paused, her voice low. I saw texts a couple years ago, from someone named Langford. I didn't know who he was, but it was pretty clear it wasn't a friend. I stared at her. Why didn't you say anything? She looked down at her hands. Because I didn't want to make it real, and because I knew you didn't know. I didn't want to be the one to break it. That hurt worse than anything. The fact that my daughter had been carrying this secret just to protect me. I cleared my throat. Marcy says she's moving in with him. The boys are going with her. Jessica nodded slowly. I figured. And she says she wants $500 a month for you. Jessica rolled her eyes. I don't care about that. I just want to stay connected with you. I already told Mom I want weekends and school breaks here. You did? Yeah, she said, leaning back in her chair. She wasn't thrilled, but I told her I'm not living full-time with someone I barely know. A wave of emotion washed over me. Grief, gratitude, heartbreak, all mixed into one. I know things are going to be different, she said. But I'm not going anywhere. I can help around here, do my own laundry, whatever. I blinked, trying not to cry. You're not supposed to be the one worrying about all this. She gave a little smile. Maybe not, but I kind of figured one of us had to. That night, after dinner, just the two of us, I watched her sit on the living room floor with a bowl of popcorn, sketching something in her notebook. She looked peaceful, like she wasn't scared. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like maybe I wouldn't drown in all of this. Maybe we'd figure it out together. The mornings felt the emptiest. The silence in the house was different now. No sound of boys thudding down the stairs. No cereal spilled on the counter. No arguing over the bathroom. Just Jessica brushing her teeth quietly and the occasional buzz of her hair straightener from the hallway. I dove into work. Elton and I started meeting more often, sometimes every night after dinner. We'd set up shop in his garage or mine, tinkering with code, testing server clusters, stress testing the system like it was a living thing. I think he knew I needed the distraction. He didn't ask questions, just handed me coffee and kept things moving. The project was finally starting to shape up. We'd landed a meeting with a mid-sized logistics firm up in Tacoma that showed interest in our platform. Elton called it a crack in the wall. I started to think he might be right. Weekends with Jessica became the highlight of my week. She settled into a rhythm like she'd lived here alone with me forever. Saturday mornings were for grocery runs and tinkering with breakfast recipes. She had this obsession with trying weird things like adding cinnamon to scrambled eggs. Still a hard no from me. Sunday nights, we'd fold laundry and watch old crime shows together on the couch. Sometimes we talked about school, sometimes we didn't. But she never once asked about her mom or the boys. She just existed beside me. Not like a kid needing constant attention, but like a partner trying to help me patch up the wreckage. One afternoon, I caught her vacuuming the living room while her earbuds were in. I asked her why she was cleaning, when it wasn't even her week to do chores. She shrugged. It helps me think. Later, I found one of her sketches on the kitchen table, just a rough pencil drawing of the two of us sitting on the porch, a mug in my hand, her head on my shoulder. The date scribbled in the corner was from the weekend before. I didn't say anything about it. I just folded it up and tucked it in my desk drawer. The weight of Marcy's absence hit me in waves. I missed the idea of her more than the person she'd become. And the boys, I didn't even know if I had the right to miss them, but I did, every time I saw their empty room. Every time I passed a soccer field. Still, every day I woke up, made coffee, and worked on the server. Every night I cooked dinner for two. And slowly, life began to feel like it wasn't falling apart anymore, just reshaping itself, piece by piece. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when Jessica dropped the envelope on the kitchen table. I was reheating leftover chili, still in my work clothes, hair a mess from crawling under Elton's old server rack. She didn't say anything right away, just sat down and waited for me to notice. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and looked at the envelope. University of Oregon, Office of Admissions. I raised my eyebrows. You applying without telling me now? She smirked. Open it. I tore it open, expecting maybe a brochure or some early notice about scholarships. Instead, I pulled out a formal letter with her full name printed in bold at the top. She'd been accepted. Direct admit, honors track. Jessica, I said, looking up at her. Why didn't you tell me you applied? She shrugged. I wasn't sure I'd get in, and I knew Mom would have a whole list of reasons why I should stay local, or do community college first. You know how she is? That wasn't a dig. It was just fact. Marcy had always tried to keep Jessica close, as if letting her out into the world would somehow threaten her own grip on things. That instinct had only gotten worse since the divorce. But Jessica wasn't finished. She pulled out another folded sheet. There's more. The paper was thinner. A different logo this time. Exchange program. Valencia, Spain. I got accepted to their senior year immersion, she said quietly. Only a handful of students from UO get to go. Full language requirement, homestay program. I didn't tell Mom. She wouldn't have let me apply. I didn't answer right away. I was just staring at the paper, trying to process how grown up she suddenly seemed. You want to go? I finally asked. More than anything, she said. but I'll only do it if you're okay with it. I'd need help with the flights, the housing costs. I know it's a lot. I folded the letter and smiled. I'll cover it, every penny. You focus on getting ready. Her eyes welled up a little, but she blinked it away fast. That night, we stayed up late researching Spain. Airfare, homestay families, the local culture. She was practically glowing. For the first time since the divorce, she didn't look like she was carrying anything heavy. And for the first time in a long while, neither did I. It all came together faster than I expected. One Friday morning in late spring, Elton and I were sitting in a stuffy little conference room at a mid-tier logistics company in Portland. We were showing off a beta version of the server system, walking through load balancing performance charts and redundancy protocols. I thought we'd get a polite thank you and maybe a follow-up email in a week or two. Instead, the CEO stood up, shook both our hands and said, "Let's move forward. We want the full build." By the time we got back to Elton's SUV, I was shaking. Not from nerves, adrenaline. It was happening. We had a real contract, not a favor. Not a friend helping us out. A contract with real money, deadlines, and expectations. That following Monday, I gave my 2-week notice at my day job. My manager didn't say much, just asked if it was about money. I told him, no, it was about finally betting on myself. He nodded like he didn't believe me, but I didn't care. I was already mentally gone. Jessica was the first person I told. She hugged me tight and whispered, "It's about time." Marcy found out through a mutual friend. We still had people in the same neighborhood circles. I got a text from her that night. It was short and sharp. "Marcy, congrats on the new gig. Hope it comes with health insurance. The boys need coverage." That was the first time I'd heard from her in over a month. I didn't reply. A week later, I heard Langford had moved out. Rumor was he'd lost his job and was crashing at his brother's place in Salem. Marcy had gone from 2 incomes to none, and it was starting to show. Jessica mentioned that her mom had asked her to chip in for groceries, even though she was still in school. I didn't say anything about it. I just took Jessica out for dinner that weekend, let her order whatever she wanted, and told her we were okay. Work kept growing. Elton and I hired a junior developer. We got 2 more clients within 3 months. My days were long again, sometimes 12, 13 hours, but they felt different now. Like every hour meant something. One night, I sat out on the back porch after a long call with a new client. The air was cool, the sky clear. Jessica was inside, finishing a paper for her literature class. I listened to the soft clack of her keyboard through the open window and thought, this is what forward feels like. I didn't know what Marcy was doing. I didn't ask. I was done looking backward. It started with a text. No greeting, no explanation, just a single line from Marcy. "Marcy, I need your help. It's about the boys." I stared at the screen for a minute, then tossed the phone face down on the counter. It had been months. Not a word from her since that backhanded insurance comment. I didn't reply. The next day she called. I let it go to voicemail. Then another text. "Marcy, Brian and Baxter are in trouble. It's serious. I don't have the money. Please." That one hit different. I didn't respond, but I didn't delete it either. That same week, I got a call from Foster King. We'd been introduced through one of Elton's old clients, and after hearing about our server system, Foster wanted us to come down to West Palm Beach for a sit-down. He owned a small portfolio of tech ventures and was known for investing in founders who were still scrappy, but had something real. Jessica encouraged me to go. "It's Florida," she said. "Take a break. Soak up some sunshine." She was getting ready for her summer orientation at Oregon, already organizing binders and sketching packing lists. I booked the flight the next morning. Foster's place was ridiculous. Big stone columns, perfectly trimmed palms, a view of the ocean from every window. But he was warm, easy to talk to, direct without being arrogant. We spent most of the first evening in his study, whiteboards full of architecture plans, him nodding and saying, "I like your mind, John. I see where this can go." He introduced me to his operations manager, a woman named Maya, late 30s, sharp, calm, and the kind of person who made everyone in the room speak more carefully. She managed his schedule, his people, even some of his pitch meetings. The first time I sat across from her, she asked a question about our system that nobody else had thought to ask, not even Elton. We ended up talking for 2 hours after the meeting wrapped. Not just about business, but about Oregon, travel, her time in Seattle, my life post-divorce. She had this gentle way of listening, like she wasn't trying to fix me, just understand. Back in my guest room that night, I finally opened the message from Marcy again. Still no specifics, just vague panic and guilt buried under short, clipped sentences. I closed the message and blocked her number. I wasn't cold. I just wasn't hers to call anymore. Not when things broke, not when she ran out of lifelines. That weekend, Maya offered to take me on a boat ride. Just the two of us, no business talk. I said yes without thinking twice. It didn't feel like escaping. It felt like arriving. I moved to West Palm Beach that August. Jessica had just left for her first semester at Oregon, and I helped carry her boxes up 3 flights of dorm stairs. We hugged for a long time in the parking lot. She told me to stop texting her every 5 minutes. I promised I'd try. A week later, I packed 2 suitcases and flew back to Florida. Foster had offered me a 6-month stay at his guest house with a workspace attached, a place to focus, build, and breathe. Maya picked me up from the airport. We stopped for Cuban sandwiches on the way back, and it didn't feel new or forced. It felt like continuing a conversation we'd already been having. The rhythm of life down there was slower but clearer. I got up early, worked out of the office behind the house, and had evening dinners with Foster or Maya, sometimes both. I missed Jessica, of course, but I never once missed the house in Eugene. I never missed the silence that used to sit beside me like a second person. Then, in October, Marcy showed up. Not physically, thank God, but through email. This time it was longer. She wrote about how things had spiraled with Langford, how the boys were going through a rough patch, how she regretted a lot of decisions and wanted to talk face to face if possible. She ended it with, "I know you don't owe me anything, but they're still your sons in a way. You raised them. They remember." I stared at that line for a long time. I didn't feel anger, not even sadness, really. Just this hollow sort of distance, like reading an old yearbook note from someone who barely knew me. I wrote back 2 lines. I hope the boys find their way. But I'm not part of that world anymore. That was it. I never got a reply. Maya and I grew closer. She'd bring over her laptop and work next to me, legs tucked up under her like she lived there. We'd cook simple dinners, play old records on Foster's dusty turntable, and talk about everything. Our childhoods, our regrets. The weird directions life takes when you stop steering out of fear. One night on the back patio, with a warm breeze and 2 glasses of wine between us, she said, "You don't talk much about your ex." I looked at her and said, "That chapter's over." And for the first time, I really meant it. The day Foster passed, the ocean was calm. It was a Tuesday morning, just after sunrise, when Maya came to the guest house with tears in her eyes. She didn't say anything at first, just handed me a letter. Foster had been in hospice for a week, fighting harder than any 80-year-old had a right to. He'd known the end was near, though. That letter was proof of it. Inside was a simple note, handwritten and clean. "John, you built something from nothing. I respect that. You never let bitterness define you. I respect that even more. I'm leaving the house and the attached office to you. Keep it going. You've got the mind for it. Maya believes in you. I do too. Foster." I sat down on the edge of the bed and read it again. And again. My throat burned. Not just from grief, but from the overwhelming sense that, for the first time in my life, I had space. Real, permanent space to grow into who I was becoming. Maya and I made the move official a few weeks later. She moved in full-time. We repainted the kitchen, updated the office, even planted lemon trees in the backyard, like Foster had always talked about but never gotten around to. I kept his photo on the mantle. The business continued to expand. Elton came down for a month to help hire new talent. We brought on 2 interns from the local tech college and started pitching a national logistics chain. I was still on calls most of the day, but the stress didn't feel corrosive anymore. It felt like purpose. Jessica loved Spain. She'd send me long, rambling emails about her host family, the food, and how slow the internet was in her building. We had weekly video chats, even with the time difference. She started calling Maya M, short for Maya Not Mom, in a half-joking, half-loving way. It stuck. I hadn't heard from Marcy in nearly a year. No calls, no updates. The boys had faded into the background, like old classmates you remember in name only. Whatever anger I once held had dissolved into quiet acceptance. They had their path. I had mine. One night, I stood barefoot on the back patio, glass of iced tea in hand, listening to Maya laugh at something on her phone inside. The house was warm with light. The porch fan spun slow overhead. The world felt still, like it was finally giving me permission to exhale. I thought back to who I used to be, a man hanging on to a picture of family that no longer existed. A man afraid to move, to change, to let go. But now I was free. And I wasn't going back.